Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sasi Prasad and I'm a technical architect in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Today in this session, we'll be discussing Automation Studio use cases and we'll be discussing more about performing delta operations with SQL queries. We'll show you how we would write an append query, an update query, and an override query. So let's directly jump into the Marketing Cloud instance and let's get started. This is my automation where I have a script activity that would insert 5,000 records into the product purchase history table. And then I have the delta append query where I'm using the update data action. Then I have another append product purchases where I'm using append and appending it to the append product purchases data extension. And then I have an override query which basically overrides the override product purchases. And finally, I have an hourly product purchases which also uses appended action and appends to the hourly product purchases. So each query has a different target data extension. I have copied all this code into my Visual Code Editor. This is my SSJS code where this particular SSJS generates 5,000 records and inserts the record into the product purchases history. This is my delta append query where I have used left join operation here and it adds the record into the delta product purchases. Then I have an append query where it fetches the record from the product purchase history for the last 1 hour and then it appends the record into the appends product purchases. And I have an override query where I have also used custom object key for indexing purposes. I'll discuss this later. And this particular query overrides and adds the record into the override product purchases. And finally, I have the hourly product purchases, which fetches the record from the product purchase history for the last 1 hour and appends this to the hourly product purchases. So first, let's run this automation. And let's click on run. While this automation runs, let's discuss the data extensions. So this is my product purchase history and those 5,000 records are being inserted into this data extension by that SSJS script activity. Then I have a hourly product purchases where the purchase ID is the primary key and we have the created date, which is the system date. Whenever a record is added, it will add the system date into this particular attribute. Then we have the delta purchases where we are doing the update operation and the append. In the append, the difference is I don't have the primary key or the purchase ID. So here in this data extension, we don't have any primary key. And finally, for the override, we have added one extra field called indexing. We'll discuss this later. Let's go back to automation. So our automation is complete now. Let's go to our data extension. And now you can see all the data extension has 5,000 records. Now, I want to run this automation for the second time. Our automation is complete, and you can see the last query activity failed. If you hover over this activity, you'll come to know it failed because of primary key constraint. So let's go to that query activity. This was our hourly product purchases, and it has a data action as append. Let's go to the data extension, and you can see because it was a failure, so it didn't add any records. Why is that? Because we have the purchase ID as the primary key, and without waiting for another 1 hour, we ran this query activity. So let's discuss this query activity. So here what we are doing is we are doing a select operation on the product purchases history data extension, and we are trying to fetch the last 1 hour record. Since the time difference between this query execution, it was not more than 1 hour, it also fetched the previous records which it had already inserted. And so it landed into error with the primary key violation. So if you're simply using where clause with data function and trying to fetch last 1 hour, it might land into issue if you have primary key in your data extension. But I have used a similar query called Append. Let me go to my automation, like this 2.2. This was also an Append, and it was similar to this query. So this was my Append query, but it didn't land into any error because for the Append, I didn't use the purchase ID as the primary key. But you can see the difference here in the number of records. Instead of 10,000, it now has 15,000. Means this particular data extension has duplicate records. Now let's go to the override query. This override query is also similar to that append query, but since it's an override, it would just fetch the last 1 hour record and refreshes this particular data extension. So if I have to run this query, say after 1 hour, it will only have 5,000 records. So the final one which we want to discuss today is the 2.1 delta append query, where I'm using update as a data action, and I'm updating the delta product purchases. In this query, I'm using left join operation with an extra where clause where the purchase ID is null and it is looking into the delta product purchases. So when this query operation runs, it looks for the last 1 hour record and also makes sure that that particular record is not in the delta product purchases. If you're wondering why I'm using update instead of append, then let me show you. So this is our query activity which is failing, and let me update this. Let me change the join operation with the hourly product purchases. Let's validate it. It says fine. Click on next. We select append, and when we say finish, it gives you an error saying that you can't use join with the hourly product purchases with the append data action. For all your queries where you're using data action as append, and in your query, if you are using the same data extension in your join operations or your from statement, it will give you this error. So we would not be able to make the changes. That's why in this delta append, I have used update data action. And for the override, I have used this custom object key, though you can find the duplicates with the purchase ID, but it will be much more helpful with the custom object key to extract the duplicate records. If you're new with SQL queries in Marketing Cloud, and if you're trying to implement append data action for your query operations, you have to be very mindful of all these anomalies that do happen with this append operation. You should be aware of the primary key constraint and also be very clear with your where clause definition and when you're trying to execute that query. So if you're new, I would always suggest you to lean back to the update data action for all your query operation. Even with the update, you can do the delta mapping or retrieving of the queries, and you can also perform the append action with update. That's it for today. If you like this session, give a thumbs up. If you have any queries or clarification, please add it into the comment section. Thank you all. See you next time. Bye.